BC Maritime Employers Association asks Labour Board to intervene to divert strike. Report details horrors of residential schools to counter denialism. New estimates suggest genocide in Gaza has killed more than 180,000 Palestinians. Cambodia accused of targeting environmental activists. And a left-wing alliance beats out the far right in second round of voting in France. Good morning. It's Monday, July 8th. I'm Nora. Here are your headlines. The BC Maritime Employers Association has asked the Industrial Relations Board to help divert a looming strike. The International Longshoremen and Warehouse Union, Local 514, the union representing ship and dock foremen, has served the association and DP World Canada with a notice of intended strike action starting Monday at 4:30 p.m. local time. The association wants the Labour Board to declare the strike action a violation of the Canada Labour Code. It put out a statement Sunday saying that if the Labour Board allows the strike to proceed, the association would have, quote, no choice but to take defensive action in the form of an industry-wide lockout, unquote. Federal Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan said this on Twitter, quote, federal mediators are working with the parties to help them reach a deal, and the best deals are made at the bargaining table, unquote. The union said in a statement last month that 99% of its workers voted against the final offer from the Employers Association. A central sticking point was DP World Canada's announcement that it would introduce some automation at a yard at a port in Vancouver. Next, Kimberly Murray, the special interlocutor for missing children in unmarked burials, has published a new report that details the horrors that took place at residential schools to combat denialism about those schools' roles. The report, titled Sites of Truth, Site of Consciousness, goes into a historical review of the quote-unquote assimilationist policies that were implemented at these schools and detailed how more than 150,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children were abused by the system. The report serves as a companion to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report on missing children and unmarked burials. It provides historical records and evidence of the atrocities carried out against Indigenous children. The report states that unmarked graves and other burial sites at residential schools are evidence of crimes against humanity that could be prosecuted, according to the CBC. In an interview, Murray said this, quote, this is meant to be an evidentiary piece of the genocide and the crimes against humanity that supplements, complements, and supports what the survivors have been saying for decades, unquote. Next to international news, and first, The Lancet, a weekly peer-reviewed general medical journal, has published an article saying that the current death toll coming out of Gaza is likely an underestimate. Reminder, that number is 30,000 people, and the true number of deaths, says The Lancet, is likely closer to more than 180,000 people. Their estimated death toll would mean that the ongoing genocide has killed nearly 8% of Gaza's total population. The article details how the process of counting the death toll has become increasingly difficult because of the large-scale destruction of Gaza's infrastructure. And this has, once again, led media and various officials to call into question the veracity of the death toll Gaza's health ministry provides. The writers of the paper state that their estimate of over 180,000 deaths is a conservative one, and that even if there were a ceasefire today, the number could grow because of the destruction to the healthcare system, lack of access to food, water, and shelter, the spread of disease, and the loss of funding to humanitarian organizations. This comes as the genocide has entered its 10th month and continues to be an ongoing cynical theater around the potential for a ceasefire deal on the part of the Americans and Israelis. The writers close off their article by calling for a ceasefire and a surge in humanitarian aid. Turning now to Cambodia, where the government has been targeting young environmental activists. 10 activists from the conservation group Mother Nature were charged and convicted of conspiring against the state and insulting the king. They were sentenced to between 6 and 8 years of prison time. According to Al Jazeera, the charges relate to the group's work on pollution in the Tonle Sap River between 2012 and 2021. The river feeds into the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia and is, quote, a major fishing hub, unquote. Human rights organizations have criticized the government's actions, saying this is an attempt to muzzle criticism of government policies. And finally, to France. Good news in France. If you know anybody who's French, you've probably heard the news already, or maybe you saw it online. The new Popular Front, Le Nouveau Front Populaire, a coalition of left-wing parties, has won the second round of voting in the country's snap election, holding back the far-right party of Marine Le Pen called Rassemblement National. The coalition managed to snag the most parliamentary seats, but fell short of a majority. No party secured an outright majority. Emmanuel Macron's centrist party came in second, with Le Pen's party coming in third place. Le Monde has reported that it was the highest voter turnout since 1981. The result means that France's parliament will be divided into three blocks: the left, the center, and the right. In reaction to the results, the Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, resigned. This is such good news for the left-wing parties in France. And it really does show that when you have an electoral system that allows for people's votes to count, like France's does, well, you might have a surge in the far right, but you also can have surges in the far left as well. Sandy and I talk about this in this week's episode, and of course, that's coming out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. You are listening to this podcast at sandyaurora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. I hope you have a wonderful Monday, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.